Everyone, welcome back. It's been almost a month since the last time I spoke to you, and I am still on the Good Representation series, and still with the sub series within it of good female characters, or at least interesting female characters, in animated movies with male protagonists. So, we talked last time about Pixar. This time, let's talk a little bit about Disney because there is one outstanding decade of Disney's history that I want to highlight. Between 1989, shall we say, and 1999, this is the period called the Disney Renaissance. And it was a rebirth of quality storytelling and a resurgence of the Disney brand name in association with quality family filmmaking. But during that stretch of time between 1989 and 1999, Disney put out some of its most highly regarded films, and only two of them lacked, at least from my standpoint, any real strong female representation. In every other film made during this period, you had at least one really interesting, funny, and important female character in every story, except for two. The first was The Rescuers Down Under. That one was a little bit disappointing in terms of the way it deployed Eva Gabor as Miss Bianca. She really didn't have a lot to do except to be a point in a quasi love triangle set up between um, Bob Newhart's character Bernard and a new character, Jake. So, not a lot to do. She doesn't play all that active a role in the rescue, and she's off screen for a lot of the film. And the second one is The Lion King. Now, The Lion King's an interesting case because the character of Nala, I think the writing was there for her. I think the problem wasn't that the character wasn't well written, and she does play a significant role in the story, at least as far as her impact on the story's male lead goes. But I couldn't help finding, and to this day, I can't help finding Laura Kelly's voice performance a little uninspiring. I think that character might have shone a little brighter if they had chosen a different voice actress. So, I mean, what do I know? It is still the perhaps the most highly regarded of all the Disney films, and certainly the biggest box office success of this period. But those two just stand out as really not that, they're good films. Lion King is a great film, but all the others made during this period do have that interesting female character. And those that had male protagonists, let's look at them. Well, you have Jasmine in Aladdin. My main problem with Jasmine is that she's a smurfette, in that she's the only woman in the entire film who gets a name, who gets a personality. You get some women who show up at the beginning of the film in the one jump ahead number, but Jasmine's really the only major character or impactful character who happens to be a woman. But she's interesting to me because she she's a move away, a step away from the rather bland love interests that we used to see in Disney films with male protagonists. I think of that type of character being best exemplified by Maid Marian in Robin Hood. She has a nice voice, but that's about all she has. and doesn't really play any role or have any real identity beyond just being Robin Hood's love interest. And with Jasmine, it seems like the studio, the writers were at least making an effort to have the love interest be an interesting person, somebody with goals of her own or ideas of her own, and someone who could even be a little bit funny. Although she's not, she doesn't stand out to me quite as much as some of the other characters that I'm going to mention later, but still, I do see her as a step forward. Then the next film, we skip over The Lion King because I've already mentioned that, but the next film after that to have a male lead was Hercules. And Hercules' love interest in this film is what they tried to do with Jasmine, they succeeded and then some with the character of Megara or Meg in Hercules. She is snarky as heck. She has a head on her shoulders. And she is not 100% on the side of the angels. For most of the movie, she's actually working for the villain. So there's a little bit of moral ambiguity with Meg for the first part of the film. But she has a redemption arc. And of course, by the end of the film, or by the climax of the film, she actually veers into straight up hero territory in that she becomes the first love interest in any Disney film that I know about, the first female love interest to save the male hero's life. So she represents an even bigger step forward in terms of actually doing something interesting with the love interest character. And then we have Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hunchback of Notre Dame is an interesting case because while Esmeralda is the love interest of Quasimodo, it's only a one-sided love. Esmeralda has a love interest of her own in Captain Phoebus. And it's interesting the way it works. Quasimodo is the protagonist of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, who's in love with Esmeralda, so she's his love interest. But then Esmeralda is paired off with Captain Phoebus, and Phoebus is her love interest. If you watch the film, you'll see that Esmeralda is actually more important to the film and has more to do. And despite Kevin Kline's great voice work, more personality than Phoebus does. So she's a love interest, but she also has a love interest. So it's interesting the way that works out. And to this day, this film, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, is the only movie that I've actually liked Demi Moore in. So, again, an interesting take on the quote love interest in a male-led film. Then, in 1999, the Disney Renaissance had to come to an end at some point, and it came to an end with Tarzan. Tarzan, a really, I think, underrated movie. Just brilliantly animated. It's gorgeous to look at. All the voice acting is strong. And in this one, you have not just one female character aside and apart from the male hero, but three. You actually have three female characters who are important to the movie. The first one, the character of Turk. I'm not really a big fan of Rosie O'Donnell's voice acting. I'm not really all that fond of her voice in general. So I'm gonna not talk as much about her, but I will say it is kind of cool for um, an animated movie's sidekick, a Disney sidekick, to be female for once. How often do we see that? Well, we really don't. Whether the protagonist is male or female, the sidekicks are always male, even if they don't talk. So, good on them for making this sidekick female for a change, even though I don't really like her voice. But then we have the love interest. We have Jane, who is voiced very well by Minnie Driver. And Jane is full on funny, certainly the funniest of all the female love interests and the quirkiest of all the female love interests in Disney films up to this point. She actually has moments of slapstick, moments of pratfallery, if you will, in her first scene where she's chased by a monkey and then later by a horde of monkeys. And she's there's a trope in the TV tropes on the TV tropes website called "Beauty is Never Tarnished." This averts that. We see her get wet. We see her in rather embarrassing, unladylike situations without being naughty, of course. But I love that they will let a female character do this. I love that they will let a female character do physical comedy within this movie. But aside and apart from that, aside and apart from the fact that she's funny, Jane is also smart, she's creative, and she has a big heart. So she's the kind of character that you can get attached to pretty easily and with good reason, so that we can understand why our hero Tarzan might be fascinated by her and might fall in love with her. And then there's the third character I would say for last, because this kind of character really doesn't show up very much in Disney films or Pixar films at all, and that is the living mother. Most of the time, moms in Disney are dead. And if they're not dead, they're very much in the background. Interestingly enough, aside and apart from Kala, who is Tarzan's eighth foster mother, the only really significant mother character I can think of is Mrs. Jumbo from Dumbo. She has a really badass scene where she's trying to protect her son and then ends up locked up. But most of the time, the mother is either dead at the beginning of the movie or she dies during the film, Bambi being the most famous example. But Kala gets to live through the film. She's beautifully voiced by Glenn Close, and she is this warm and wonderful mother figure. And it's a treat to see her. It's a treat to see all three of these characters um, in this male led film. So, those have some good representation, despite the fact, of course, that they have male leads. There is something there. There are characters there for the little girls in the audience to look at and say, yeah, that's somebody like me, or that's someone like someone I know, or that's like I might want to become, or that's just a character I enjoy. She's funny, she's fascinating. So, thus ends this particular vid. I'll be back with more, hopefully without quite so long to wait.